Hello and welcome to the Game 3 podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Dave DuFour joins the show, and we're going to talk about De'Aaron Fox, the Sacramento Kings in the danger zone, quote unquote, that they have entered. We're going to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Timberwolves and their own danger zone of sorts. And finally, we're going to talk about whether or not the NBA is actually worse than what it is now and if it has changed in any way, shape, or form. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game 3 podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Dave, what's going on, buddy?
Not a lot and everything. You know, it's holidays. The NBA Cup just ended. Karl Anthony Towns went back to Minnesota. I mean, I don't know, man. It's like everything. It's awesome.
It's all happening. It's all happening. And by the way, speaking of it all happening, literally in the 14 seconds that I did the intro and like played the intro song, Alex Caruso signed an extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder. 4 years, 81 million. It's, you know, look, I don't want to say that this has been a done deal since the deal happened for Josh Giddey in the summer. But if you talk to people around the league, it was widely expected that when Alex Caruso got eligible for an extension, that the Thunder would likely extend Caruso at near his max number. And this is what this is. It's 4 years, 81 million. And it's, you know, big money for Caruso. I will say, like, Caruso has been a little bit worse, honestly, than what I expected this season, in large part because he has struggled a little bit to consistently make himself enough of a threat offensively to get guarded by opposing teams. But defensively, he's still all there. He's still everything that he is. He's, for me, one of the 3 or 4 best guard defenders in the league, if not the best guard defender in the league. I will certainly hear out a case for that if somebody wanted to make it. I think this is a fine deal. I would like to know if there's any non-guaranteed money on the end of it. Like, is there a team option? Is there a, you know, final year non-guarantee, something like that? But I'm in no way, shape, or form surprised by this contract, I guess I will say.
Yeah, I mean, again, Sam Presti does pretty good deals. This is a good extension, I think. I mean, number one, like you mentioned, he is probably the best guard defender in the league, and we've watched him guard bigger guys. Like, I think I've gotten a good sense of what he can do playing up a bit and guarding some smaller fives, some smaller fours. I mean, he really just gives you so much flexibility on the defensive end. He's a defensive playmaker, which there's just not that many of. The shooting is disappointing, but you're not looking for Alex Caruso to be a shooter necessarily. He just has to take the shots. He doesn't have to make them. As long as he takes the shots that are come to him and he continues to play that connector role that he does, he's a great rebounder. I don't worry too much about it. I do hope that at some point, you know, he can be a league average 3-point shooter, but you know, he's not been there very long. He also dealt with an injury. So I think, you know, we have to judge what he's doing probably by the end of the season rather than right now.
I think that's right. And if you look over the course of his last few years, you know, he had 40.1% from three in his last year with the Lakers, 33% in his first year in Chicago, then 36% second year in Chicago, 41% in his final year in Chicago. And that 41% number actually came on nearly 5 attempts per game. Finally, he had started to take that volume that I think people would hope for. The other thing is that, like, he has ball skill. Like, he is comfortable. If I get a closeout, I can attack a closeout, get downhill, make a passing read, because he played point guard at Texas A&M, right? Like, he has a little bit more to his game than just needing to shoot, but he does on some level have to shoot it. I feel like he can't be a 27% 3-point shooter. He has to be like a 35% 3-point shooter. And so far he hasn't been that. I would assume that will come at some point. He's definitely not as bad of a shooter as what we have seen over the course of the first 4 weeks that he has played with Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So not bad, not a bad move. Makes all the
deal.
sense in the world.
Also,
and again,
Sam,
something that was expected.
Yeah, and also the money part of it. For every year, I'm having to wrap my head around what like that fifth starter money is going to be, right? And that's basically what this is. It's fifth starter money, and if your fifth starter is Alex Caruso, which for the Thunder, I don't know, man, he's like one of 5 guys that might start in one position. That's a luxury. So I think it's good money.
Yeah, and it's interesting for them too. Like you said, like Cason Wallace is there, obviously, and they have
Mhm.
Cason on this really cheap deal. They have Lou Dort there. I and this might be aggressive on my part, but like, I think that this deal really is probably about setting up further flexibility for them in the future. Can you move Lou? Can you move Caruso? You can probably move one of those guys on a bigger salary to maybe go fill another hole via the trade market where you have a million picks moving forward to be able to do so. It could be, Lou Dort in the spring. I'm not saying Lou Dort's going to get traded.
Sure.
I'm just saying they have the flexibility now to look down those roads. It could be Caruso in the summer or something like that. Now that they've paid him, I'm sure he's happy just to like get the 80 million or whatever it's going to be locked in long term. I think that this just makes a ton of sense in terms of everything that they have at their disposal, in terms of a deal. So in terms of, he fits their culture. He fits everything they're trying to do defensively. He covers a ton of ground defensively. They've been the best perimeter defense in the league this year. He is a huge, huge part of keying that. It all just tracks to me. Everything here just makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
Okay. The first thing that we really wanted to talk about, though, why Dave is here, I want to talk about.
I love breaking news, though.
Yeah, breaking news just happens sometimes. It's great. I love it. Okay, so we're here, and it's time. We're in the danger zone with the Sacramento Kings, apparently, according to Sam Amick and Anthony Slater at The Athletic. Shout out The Athletic. Good website, right, Dave?
Pretty good one.
Good website, right? So, according to Amick and Slater, the site of Rich Paul at a Lakers game is nothing new. The Los Angeles-based founder and CEO of Clutch Sports is widely known as the longtime agent for LeBron James and Anthony Davis, yada, yada, yada. But this visit to LA was all about De'Aaron Fox and, I quote, the danger zone the Kings have entered regarding the uncertain future of their franchise guard. League sources say Paul, who sat next to Fox's wife, Reese, throughout the 113-100 loss that dropped the Kings 13-15 and 12th in the West, was in Sacramento to meet with general manager Monty McNair and assistant general manager Wes Wilcox before the game. The discussion, league and team sources said, was focused on the existential question that needs to be answered if this partnership that began 8 seasons ago between Fox and the Kings is going to continue long term. And the big question was, what's the plan here? This also comes on the heels of De'Aaron going on Draymond Green's podcast, Draymond, another Clutch client, saying, I want to make sure we're in a position to try to win in the future because that's ultimately what I want to do. Fox, who turned 27 on Friday, told Green and fellow former player Baron Davis, for me, it's, are we looking like we're continuing to get better year after year? And are we going to be able to compete at a high level? So, Dave,
this is amazing.
This feels concerning to me.
Listen, I'm reading a book right now. If I was a Kings fan,
I'd be worried.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now on Nikita Khrushchev, and man, he really could have stood to have learned from Clutch. They are just really, they know how to do the entire thing when they're ready to circle the wagons, and it just feels like the timing is right for a De'Aaron Fox trade. I've had this conversation with a few people already this year. I mean, before all of this came out, before we knew that the Kings were going to, I'm not even going to say disappoint. I think they look about what you should expect with the guys that they're putting out there. And
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, this is a conversation that's been happening off of, the podcast, in my opinion, for a couple months at this point. What is the plan, Sam?
So here's the thing about where the Kings find themselves. I don't think the Kings are a particularly bad basketball team. I mean,
No.
If you look at the peripheral numbers, anything like that, I believe that they are both top 15 in offense and in defense, despite now sitting at 13 and 16 after their most recent loss here, again, to the Los Angeles Lakers. They are 14th in offense, or 8th in offense, 14th in defense. Their expected win total is actually 16 and 13 based off of their plus 2.2 net rating. What's happened is they've just lost a lot of really close games. If you look at like anything, that you've seen from their season to this point, I believe that they're like 3-9 or so in games decided by 5 or fewer points. This is something that, given that they go out and they sign DeMar DeRozan,
Right.
a great closer. You have De'Aaron Fox, who I believe won a Clutch Player of the Year award last year, right? You would expect them to be able to close tight games. And I think that more than anything, what this goes to show is that the Western Conference is just loaded, right? You look at the standings right now. They are in 12th currently. They are 3 games out of 6, 3.5 games out of 5th in the West, right? And oh, by the way, like a week and a half ago, the sky was falling for the Lakers. Everything was catastrophic. They are now 16 and 12, and they are in 5th in the Western Conference, right? So things in the West can change in a hurry. The second thing I think it shows is you can't, no matter how good your clutch players are, you can't rely on winning close games. They're going to go the opposite way a decent amount of the time.
Yeah.
They've been good typically in these tight games in the past. This year, we're starting to revert to the mean a little bit. It's difficult to win close games against other professional fucking basketball players.
No. You just let these guys perform. It's a movie. They just push the win button. Yeah.
It's crazy. But like, that's what I look at here. I'm just like, this is a really freaking hard league to win games in. And if you have to rely on tight games, and almost all of these games in the West are going to be tight, because that's the reality of the Western Conference this year, where from 5th to 12th right now is 16 and 12 to 13 and 16. That's the difference between being out of the play-in toward almost being in a home playoff series if you finish 4th. It's just exceptionally hard. It's exceptionally hard. So I guess I'll ask you this, like, let's start here. Have you thought that the Kings have played better than their record this year? And what have you thought of them when you've watched them? Let's go with that.
mean, that's an easy one. I mean, again, I think that they look about what I expect out of them. They're not a bad team. Like you said, they're not a bad team. They're just not like a good one. They are the 6th seed, maybe. They are probably a play-in team. If we're just being honest, they don't have an elite defense, which is really like, you have to figure that out. I mean, that's the key to being top 4. And so if you're not top 4 in the West, you're somewhere in the play-in. Like, I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, like you just said, the Lakers, the sky was falling 2 weeks ago, and now they won 3 games in a row, and they're the 5 seed. It just, that is the jumble that the Kings are in. And unfortunately, they're on the backside of it because they can't get a stop. That's what's killing them in crunch time. It has nothing to do with the scoring. And I'm sure it's down for them this year somehow. I don't have the numbers in front of me. It feels down, I would say, but they aren't getting stops. I mean, if you don't have a reliable stopper, period, what do you do?
I think that more than anything, what my worry is for them is that if you look at their strength of schedule so far, even though they're in the Western Conference, according to Basketball Reference, their strength of schedule is still 25th in the league. So like, they've had a lot of games against Raptors without Scotty Barnes and, I think they like split those games early in the season, and they've played Utah, I think 3 times already this year, and they've played the Spurs a couple of times, and the Spurs are tough. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
like, you know, a middling team in the West. They've
Worse than
played
the
Brooklyn
Kings.
already. Yeah, like you would expect the Spurs to be worse than the Kings, right? They've played Brooklyn already. Like they've played Portland already. Like they play, or no, I'm sorry, they played Portland twice and split games with Portland, right? So like their schedule hasn't been the level that it's going to get to. Like if you look a bit later in the season, like if you start to get into, February, March, like this is their March run. It's Rockets, at Dallas, at Denver, home against San Antonio, at the Clippers, home against the Knicks, at Golden State, at Phoenix, home against Memphis, Cleveland. That is a run for them. It is 10 games in 19 days against teams that are all really high level teams.
Yeah. They're either going to be in it or out of it, right? At the end of that.
Right. And then you can look at another stretch here where in January they have home against Memphis, at Golden State, home against Miami, at Boston, at Chicago, at Milwaukee, home against Houston. They get a respite against the Wizards at home. Then they go Golden State, then a massive road trip of Denver, Knicks, Nets, 76ers, Thunder, Minnesota, home against Orlando. Like the schedule gets hard here now for the Kings. I would be worried, I think, if I was a Kings fan, that this is going to get trickier. Now, the good news about like how difficult that schedule is, or maybe it's bad news, I don't know. A lot of this comes after the deadline. So there is a case that you can just like convince De'Aaron to like, stick through this a little bit.
Isn't that, let me ask you, because you think about the team building part quite a bit, right?
I do.
Is now the time though for them? Like forget the De'Aaron Fox part of this. For them, if they're going to get the biggest return, isn't it? Because he swings the playoff race.
Yeah. No, it's for sure now. They would get the biggest return right now. Yeah. So here's my thing. I was a big fan of the Kings doing what they did in terms of locking in Sabonis, locking in Malik Monk, basically locking themselves in salary-wise to the team that they had. Because I feel that this organization under Vivek, under the Maloofs, since the Weber era ended, everything like that, it needed some stability. It needed a few years where they were just normal, where they were just a team that was competing, playing well, like competing on a night-to-night basis. Yeah, they're a good basketball team.
Fun to watch.
They're fun to watch. They're 500.
Yeah.
They've re-engaged the fan base. Like Light the Beam is a thing there that like other teams, like you listen to the Draymond podcast, like Draymond like trashed the Beam because he was frustrated. Like he doesn't like it when like they have to go in there and the Kings win and they light the beam. It's frustrating, right? So they've re-engaged the fan base. And for that organization particularly, which has such a great engaged fan base, because it's really, now that the A's are there, I guess this is slightly different, but the A's are leaving eventually. But like that is a one team city for the most part, right? They really care about the Kings. And to be able to re-engage that fan base in such a substantial way, I think was absolutely critical. I think it was so important to what they had to do. Right. But this is where the decisions get hard now. And I think where I'm at is I would see how the next month and a half goes and see if you get to a point where you are now in the 5th seed, because you're again 3.5 games back of the 5th seed right now. If you can get to the top 8 by the time you have to make a decision, I would not want to move Fox now. Because the other thing about this is that if you do make that run, and if you do end up in a positive situation with De'Aaron Fox,
Right.
and he does make all NBA,
Yeah.
he's re-signing with you. There's no two ways about this. He would be giving up so much money, an insane, ridiculous, obscene amount of money that we haven't seen guys give up in order to not sign the 35% extension. Because if he makes all NBA, he's eligible for a bigger extension. He turned down a 3-year, $165 million extension this summer. He confirmed that on the Draymond podcast. In order to go and try and make all NBA this year, to be eligible to sign like the Jaylen Brown deal, right? And we can talk about whether or not it makes sense for the Kings to pay De'Aaron Fox the Jaylen Brown deal. Honestly, if I was them and I was trying to compete for a title, I probably wouldn't want to. But like,
I would. I think he's pretty. I mean, I just don't know where do you find better than De'Aaron Fox? That's a problem.
And that's where I was going to get to next. For them, they're in this very difficult position where if you sign De'Aaron to that deal, it artificially becomes harder to find a number one option, because much as I love De'Aaron Fox and think he is probably a top 30 player in the NBA, top 25 player in the NBA, whatever you want to call it, I think he is not a top 15 player in the NBA. And not a top 8 player, especially in the NBA, which is where you
got
need
much
to
of a
be.
shot at all NBA this year, by the way.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
I don't think he is the guy that can lead you to a title as your number one option at the end of the day, which means if you're going to build around De'Aaron Fox, you need to go out and you need to find the number one option. That's what's hard about this, because by signing De'Aaron, if you're the Kings, you lock yourself in to being too good to probably find that number one guy, but also, not being quite good enough to really contend for a title.
Right.
And for the Kings, like, that might be okay on some level. Like, it might be fine just to have a good team in a good era of basketball for a good long time now.
Yeah.
And if they do that, I think that is a completely reasonable endeavor for them, because that fan base loves Fox. Fox has been unbelievable in the community in Sacramento. Domantas Sabonis is like a great dude. Like, you can look around the league and they're just like an awesome, like, the Kings have a really good, like, they have a core of really good dudes. DeMar is an awesome dude. Like, you can find Keegan Murray's like a really good dude. Like, they are fun to root for if you're a Kings fan base. And like, part of that has to be a part of the calculus, I guess, even if you're not trying to win a title, you're trying to win a title, but like, it's not the primary goal. Maybe. I don't know. Like, when I feel like there's a lot here I'm saying, but like, where are you on this, I guess?
I want to talk about the Karl-Anthony Towns trade for a minute. Cause when that trade happened, man, number one, who expected it? Number two, it made me think, who knew Karl-Anthony Towns was available?
Sure.
And
good question.
There are teams. How many teams could the Kings have tried to get like Karl-Anthony Towns? Like, how do you feel about them as an asset team? Like, and instead of looking to move Fox, because I've thought about this from the Fox angle. There are so many teams that would want Fox. I mean, he would be a really great number 2 for a bunch of teams.
I mean, it's so interesting because you look at it and you can say like, well, like, Domantas is kind of applicable to Julius Randle, if we're going the too big combo route, right? Domantas is better than Randle. I don't want to.
Right. Well, yeah.
Otherwise, and like, there's probably a little bit more overlap with Randle and Gobert, but like, it's kind of interesting. Like, could you have gone down that road?
Yeah. It was just a thought, and the number of teams that would have been in on him. But I think about the Kings, and I've tried to think about it as less of a blow up the Kings, like, because if you move Fox, I just don't know what do the rest of the guys do? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that
Yeah.
team make a lot of sense? And so
No, if you move him, you're blowing it up.
Exactly. But what if you said, okay, well, we've got some guys. I mean, certainly DeMar DeRozan would have a market,
I would think so. Yeah.
Instead of having to do the thing where they move Fox. I mean, it just, to me, moving Fox is a huge step back for them. You are literally clearing the deck and having to start over. But how many teams do you think would make compelling offers for Fox?
So before we do that, I want to, because I'm interested in that conversation in a big way too. I do want to talk about the All NBA thing first, because I think it is an important conversation before we get to the trade
value
thing.
Yeah.
So Fox this year is averaging 26 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.7 steals, shooting 49, 33, 81 from the field. He's had a great year, right? Like anybody that is disparaging De'Aaron Fox is out of their minds. I'm going to list off names in terms of All NBA, right? So guys that we think are certainly making All NBA barring injury.
Right.
Nikola Jokic is 1. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander 2. Luka 3. Jason Tatum 4. Giannis 5. Steph 6. Let's go Wemby 7. I think Wemby's better than De'Aaron Fox. If I'm being honest, all due respect to De'Aaron, but like you combine the offense and the defense, I think he's just ahead. Anthony Davis 8.
Probably.
I think AD's ahead of De'Aaron. He's averaging more points. He is a much better defender. Yeah. He rebounds the ball. He's been really, really good. Kevin Durant 9.
Mm-hmm.
Did I mention Steph? I can't remember.
You did.
Yeah, I think I said Steph.
You did.
So Steph 9. Donovan Mitchell 10. Just given where the Cavs are, Donovan's going to be ahead of him in the pecking order. That's the reality. So that leaves like 5 spots to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other names here. I will be interested to see if Franz Wagner can get back in time to be eligible. I don't know if he will be, but that's a name. One of the Grizzlies guys, Jaren Jackson, Ja Morant.
I would guess Jaren.
I think Jaren this year has a better case so far than Ja does. I agree with you. If the Thunder win 60 games, we're going to get like Jalen Williams in that conversation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think De'Aaron's ahead of Jalen in the league pecking order right now.
Yeah.
But you just don't know what voters are going to do in terms of like rewarding winning teams. You can say the same with Jaylen Brown right now as well.
Jalen Brunson.
Jalen Brunson is another name.
Right.
Look, like I think De'Aaron Fox is better than LaMelo Ball, but LaMelo Ball is another name that will be in the mix. Alperen Şengün, if the Rockets continue down this road, again, like I think De'Aaron is better than him.
Is going to have buzz. I mean,
Karl Anthony Towns, 100%, I think would be ahead of De'Aaron Fox right now, based off of how he has played. So Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, 2 other guys that we have not mentioned.
Yeah.
He's just kind of in this ballpark right now where you can, like, if you want to make a case for him in some respect, like we haven't mentioned LeBron yet either, I think.
Right.
Like we haven't mentioned, like Kyrie's been amazing. Like shout out Bernardo, like in the comments. Kyrie's been incredible this year. I think he would have a real case over him right now. Cade Cunningham, has been great this year. I think Fox would be ahead of Cade because that's just a better team, but like in the mix for sure. So I would put Fox's All NBA odds at, let's go with something under 50%, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that number is. It could be like 20%, honestly.
I mean, Cade Cunningham, man.
Yeah. Cade's been amazing.
Have a case.
Yeah. Cade's been amazing. So I say all of this to say, if he does not make All NBA this year, I think you are almost certainly gearing up for a trade in the offseason.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that there are probably a few teams that would be willing to consider going to get him now in order to get him for the other, like the extra playoff run under this cheaper deal. So you brought up who would make offers. The boys in The Athletic, shout out Slater and Amick, they mentioned the Spurs is an option. And to me, and I'm not outing who their sources are. I don't know who their sources are. That I have heard rumors of Clutch having an idea of pairing a guard with Victor in San Antonio for a while now. Yeah. Let's go with that. You know, not necessarily like actively trying to do it, but like seeing that as a really good spot to go. Let's go with
They like money.
Yeah. And Victor, getting to play with Victor for, 8 years, whatever that's going to be, 5 years if you're on the contract, 6 years once you sign an extension, like there's a lot of value there. So that, I think, I'm not saying that that's where Sam and Slater like got that, but it doesn't surprise me that that's a team that's come up based off of what I've been told. The other one is Houston, like the two teams in Texas, which is where De'Aaron is from. De'Aaron is, Texas basketball royalty over the last few years, or the last decade. Unbelievable, prep career, decided to go to Kentucky, then ended up in Sacramento. But like, there's a whole lot of love for him in the state of Texas still. So I will ask you this. To me, the team that seems like they should offer the most is Houston. Because if it's Houston, they have a defense that can win now, and they really just need
they need a guy.
Play. They need a guy. Right?
Watching them at the end of games and watching them just scramble to figure out who's going to do stuff, it can be infuriating because they play this, that frenetic defense that they play, and then they go down in the offensive end and everyone's scared.
That's right. And on top of that,
I like that a lot.
If I am Sacramento, I probably want to do a deal with Houston.
Yeah.
Because Houston
they have these guys, man.
Has the guys that are good already.
Right.
And the question is, like, what would a deal be there? I would be surprised if they would move Amen. But if I'm getting De'Aaron Fox, I probably put Reed on the board.
I would assume Cam Whitmore and Reed are where you start if you're getting De'Aaron Fox.
I think so too, right? So you get Reed, who went top 3 in the draft.
Yep.
I would guess that the Kings probably liked Reed last year. We can throw Cam Whitmore in. I'm for that. That makes a ton of sense. And then the Rockets have a ton of picks, so you can just do that. De'Aaron makes about $34 million right now. So Reed and Cam are about 13. You can throw in the Steven Adams deal, and you can throw in the Jeff Green deal.
Love it.
And that is a 4-for-1 that gets you there. And plus you throw in draft picks, right?
Yeah.
So, we can throw in, the Phoenix 2025 pick. We can throw in the Houston 2025 pick. We can throw in, Houston's 2027, whatever you want to do there. Right. So,
and then Steven Adams can get a buyout and sign with the Thunder.
Right. So this was my vision here, as I'll pull it up on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, which by the way, if you're just listening on the podcast feed, go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie.
Wait, did you just do the Trade Machine live? Oh, amazing.
I did. So
podcasting right there.
Something like Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore, 3 first-round picks. That feels like the Mikal Bridges deal was an overpay, and we need to acknowledge that. That feels somewhat applicable to that because you get a genuine lottery prospect in Reed Shepherd. Like, no matter what you thought of last year's draft, Reed is a guy that is like a top 5, top 7 pick in just about any draft. You get Whitmore, who a lot of people had as a lottery guy, but obviously goes 20th due to some injury questions in the draft. Has looked good since he's been in the NBA, and considerably competent scorer, right? And you get 3 picks that are unprotected, right? That feels equivalent to like the 5 picks that actually feels like more to me than the 5 picks that the Knicks gave up for Mikal Bridges.
I love that trade for Sacramento. What a reset that could be, I love the Herschel Walker trade, the Cowboys trade where they got all these guys who were pretty good. I like to bring that up as this is the sort of trade that makes me kind of pay attention because like you just mentioned, it's 2 lottery guys that are already there. And then the picks. And Sacramento, I mean, a team like Utah, I guess, could blow them out of the water, but they're not realistic. I think if the Rockets are going to make a move this year, which they keep saying they're not, that they want to just play this year out and see how it goes, and they like where they're at for right now. But I think that the later it gets in the season and the closer we get to playoff time, and they are looking like a serious threat to maybe be able to come out of the West, and that the big glaring hole that they have is a guy like De'Aaron Fox can plug right into that. I don't know, Sam. I feel like I'd be pretty tempted to kind of push that button and go for it.
To me, this is like a massive amount of value. And oh, by the way, if you then look at the future for the Rockets, right? You still have some Brooklyn pick. You still have a Brooklyn pick, and I think you still have a couple of Phoenix picks, which means you can still get in the mix for other guys as well. Plus, you still have you still have some of the other younger guys. The Rockets kind of clear up some of the log jam of the younger guys as well there. Yeah, like to me, Reed is a drastically better prospect and younger player than Jalen Green. He's a much more valuable player than Jalen Green at this point.
Do you mind if I address one of the comments just for 1 second? Because this is actually kind of an important point. It's Mr. Ray. Thank you. I just don't see why the Kings never tank, even just one season. Like you need a number 1 guy, and they just refuse to go after one. And this is the market at play. When you're Sacramento, like Sam laid out the entire thing that they've done, this whole they are in the good graces of the fan base there. It seems like a really fun place to go to a game. Like they clearly love basketball there. Actually, it's refreshing as someone that covers the league and can see things just get. I mean, not to be all Steve Kerr, but a lot of these arenas feel like it's a club, not a place where you're going to watch basketball. And so the Kings, they can't just throw in the towel without a plan. And so if you're going to do something that is even anywhere like a reset, I don't think the Kings are in a position where they could ever do a flat out, hey, sell the farm tank. It's just not similar to what Houston has dealt with in their history up until, recent years, right? Like, remember, Houston was always, it was like stuck in the middle. They weren't stuck in the middle. They just couldn't get out of it because they have this fan base. Like, I mean, I think that's actually something we should applaud, to the degree that we applaud any of these people that own these teams. But I think it's a good thing not to necessarily tank and at least understand, hey, your fans aren't built for it. These guys that's not Philly. Weather's really nice in Sacramento most of the time. So you're competing with outside too. Philly, guess what? It's nasty in the winter. People are going to watch the Sixers. So sorry. I just saw that and thought it was,
no, you're not wrong.
I think it's an angle here that needs to be thought about when inaction for these teams sometimes is because there's a paralysis because that your fan base is going to turn.
Well, and here's the thing too. If I was a Kings fan, and we mentioned how many times the tanking for just a season even work. The promise of getting a guy is not guaranteed. I mean, you go back through Kings history, right? There was that era from 2008 until really 2015 where they never won 30 games, right? Yeah. And there were some seasons where at the end of those years, they definitely tanked. They really called it.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's really, really difficult. And, for instance, I see a couple of people ask, like, if I was the Kings, I would demand a men in any trade with Houston. The thing is, like, I would absolutely start with a men. That would be the guy I wanted.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The Rockets probably have better trade value that they can send out than anybody else without including a men. That's just kind of the reality of where this is for them.
For the realistic options,
Yeah, Houston has so many interesting young players that, like, okay, like, we can look around the league. We can go to, San Antonio, like Devin Vassell and, 4 first-round picks or whatever. I'd probably rather just have the younger guys with Houston and 3 first-round picks, just because I'd rather take my shot that Reed Shepherd is like a legit star. And maybe he's not. Like, he might just be, an interesting, like, Peyton Pritchard-y kind of guy.
Right.
But he might not be that. He's a better passer than Peyton. Yeah. I think he's a better shooter entering the league than what Peyton was. And we've seen where Peyton has gotten to as a shooter. You can look around, like, you can just look at a few other teams, right, where you can try and, pinpoint maybe looking for a star. Houston can just way outbid Miami without, anything.
Right.
Without including any of their top, like, elite level assets. And by the way, like, again, I'm telling you guys, like, Reed Shepherd around the league would be considered an extremely high level asset. Like, that's just the reality of where teams are on him at this point. I mean, just Orlando is a team that could probably get comparable with a bid with Houston.
Yeah.
But like, they just don't make deals in the middle of the season. Like, that's just not their MO. You know what I mean? I would love to see it. I'm for Orlando doing it, but they're just not going to do it on like a big deal. Like, that's why the Levine thing drives me crazy. Like, they're not going to go out and get Levine.
That would be amazing, though.
Yeah, it'd be really fun, but it's just not going to happen. I mean, the really fun one, the amazing one, would be Oklahoma City just saying, screw it. We'll do this for 2 years with De'Aaron Fox and Shea, and then we'll trade Fox or something, or no, we'll let Fox go in free agency.
Yeah.
And we'll give up like 5 picks in order to have De'Aaron Fox, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander,
oh my God, Jalen Williams,
Chet Holmgren, Hartenstein. Like,
that's insane.
We'll give up like half of our picks.
I guess
for
theoretically they
could
run. Give the best offer, right? Like, they have everything.
Yeah. I mean, look, if they wanted to give up one of Jalen Williams or Chet, like, automatically they have the best offer, but they're not going to do that.
No.
But yeah, look, like that's kind of where I sit on the Fox thing. To me, the 2 teams that make the most sense that you can make a case for are San Antonio and Houston. I think Houston probably has the best offer, if I'm being honest. It's just whether or not Houston wants to do it or not. And if I'm Houston, I'm probably pretty good with it. Like, I'm probably pretty good going for it. The other move is that they could move Van Vliet and like a couple of the younger guys too, if you want to go, with somebody else. But
I mean, the minutes get tight there if you add Fox into the mix, right? Like, it gets tight. In my opinion, it gets tight for Van Vliet. Jalen Green, you know what I mean? Like, it things get weird if you make a move like this, because De'Aaron Fox is that's your guy.
You probably have to then, I would say, like, if you do a mid-season De'Aaron Fox deal, you probably have to move Fred at that point.
I think so.
I would argue.
I mean, not person, but pecking order wise too. I think you just have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Fred is best when he's on the ball. De'Aaron is best when he's on the ball, right?
Yeah.
So it just make a lot of sense. Okay. Final note on all of this here. This conversation sucks for Kings fans, right? I get it.
I don't know,
it
man.
Blows.
I think it stinks because you don't want to lose a guy that you love. But if you're going to, I do think that they've done a really good job with this team putting it together. So, you know what I mean? So it's not, at least not hopeless like it used to be,
Yeah. It's not hopeless, but like, if I was a Kings fan and I'm coming off of an era where in the from 2008 until 2022, there was one season where my team won more than 33 games in that run. It would be hard for me to let go of this era of basketball. And frankly, if I was the owner of the Kings, it would be hard for me to let go of this era of basketball. That's why I do kind of wonder. I think it would take them going off of the rails this year to move De'Aaron. Like, I think it would require them to really lose. Like, I think they would have to be a significant number of games out of the top 6. And in February, like, still a couple of games like out of the playoff or play-in picture.
Okay. So if they're outside the play-in February 1st, you feel like that's it. They got to do it.
I don't even know if I got to.
Well, not got to, but they're probably going to feel like, okay, it's time.
That's where I could see push coming to shove, I think. Right now, I just don't see I don't see that being a conversation for them yet. Where they're going to move De'Aaron like right now.
Did the DeRozan deal throw you off like it did me? Like I like DeMar DeRozan so much, but it didn't.
Yeah.
The fit issues. Like at some point, someone has to think about fit when they put these teams together.
Yeah. So obviously, like the 3-point volume is like a thing that they lived on, and then you get DeMar, and that changes a little bit. I thought it was a fine deal.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it made some sense in some respect because they needed another ball handler. Like they needed somebody who could create offense outside of De'Aaron. Obviously, it hasn't worked out yet. I still don't think the jury is out there. Like they're closer to being good than like bad right now.
Right. They're not bad. They're not a bad team, actually. They're just, it's the West is really tough. And also almost everyone is kind of in the middle right now. Like it's not hard to lose a basketball game.
That's right. It's just really difficult. And here's the bigger thing for me with that one that I said at the time, and Kings fans were like, no, like they'll figure it out. The thing I was most worried about was stagnating Keegan Murray. And that has happened with DeMar.
Oh, yeah.
Because there just aren't enough touches for Keegan.
He gets really no time on the ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
That remember, so, and like a year and a half ago, man, I think we had the conversation about for the Kings, Keegan Murray's got to be the guy who can have the ball in his hands some.
Yeah, he's got to be a guy for sure.
Uh-huh.
And to this point this year, it hasn't really happened. Last year, he averaged 15 points, shot 45, 36, 83, and was aggressive and active defensively. And defensively, like all that stuff's continued this year. He's been really, really good on defense, but like the scoring numbers are down. He's shooting 42, 30, 85 and averaging 12 points a game. It feels pretty clear to me that like the offense is kind of coming back down to earth a little bit because it's hard for him to find his role and find his rhythm in terms of getting shots night after night. So this conversation sucks for Kings fans. I don't want to go without saying that because they've gone through such a dire period prior to this team, and this team has been immensely fun. And if you move De'Aaron Fox, you're blowing the whole thing up. Like that's the reality. Like you have to blow the whole thing up. I don't know. I want to acknowledge that feeling for Kings fans where like, if I was them, I would feel quite poorly about this. And I like, again, a team full of good dudes that you can root for that play an incredibly fun style of basketball that, it's just tricky. It's just really, really tricky.
They stayed.
They stayed.
They could have left.
They absolutely could have left. That's a really good point. Okay. Before we get to talking about the Timberwolves very quickly, we got to shout out the good folks over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. We love PrizePicks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. If you think Justin Jefferson or somebody like him is going to get more or less than their yardage total throughout the course of any given week, you can make your pick in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long over on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use that code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, let's talk about the Timberwolves real quick, because then we want to talk a little bit at the end about some of the NBA stuff. The Timberwolves are also in like this tricky spot. They're 14-13. But if you look at like their peripherals, honestly, their peripherals feel like slightly worse to me than Sacramento. They have a slightly better net rating, but their offense is like a significant issue right now when you watch them. I will just give you the floor on this. It feels like to me that Julius Randle is the issue. Like Julius Randle is not fitting in any way, shape, or form. I will also contend that Mike Conley is like a significant issue here as well.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you think, and look, this is one where hand up, hand raise.
Yeah.
I have to take an L on the Randle deal. I thought that made some sense for Minnesota at the time, because I liked the idea of them getting Dante, having all sorts of depth, having an extra first round pick to be able to go and get other players around them. And I thought that Randle, while worse than Towns, would be able to like do an approximation of Towns on some level, maybe even like 80% of Towns, something like that. That has not been the case at all. Hand up, I'm taking the L. It was fucking catastrophic. And that was a bad take by me. Why do you think, Dave, that the Randle deal has not worked out?
Oh man, so many ways. Number one, when they made the trade, I was like, "Oh, okay, so Naz Reid is going to start." I didn't think there was a world in which. Well, yes, I know, and the thing is, I try to live in a fantasy land where basketball players care about winning, and not just how they're perceived. But anyway, yeah, Julius Randle, he doesn't try on defense at all. The elite defensive calling card that they had is gone. Again, not to say that it's all defense, but like in order to win basketball games, having an elite defense gives you such a head start on a win. Being able to get 3 stops in a row makes a huge difference. It makes a difference on your offense, because guess what? You don't feel as much pressure because hey, you know what? If we can't drop a few shots, guess what? We know we can get it going on the other end and turn defense into offense. And they don't have that anymore because they've got a dude out there that doesn't even try. He doesn't turn around and run in transition. He's constantly getting beat behind his back. I mean, there's one video out there. Someone put together a supercut of all the times that he's just had a guy run right past him. You can turn around and sprint in defensive transition as allowed in the NBA. You don't have to just, shuffle your feet slowly like you're, playing football with your 4-year-old. It's just, there's no effort defensively. And that is beyond just the only place in which he's not trying to fit in. He's not trying to fit in. He's not trying to fit out. He's literally just doing his own thing. He's throwing grenades to guys, which is, that's there's an epidemic going around in the NBA of that, but it really is. OG Anunoby is like, he's making it an art, but it just stifles anything they're trying to do offensively. And not that they run many plays, by the way. That's one of their big, they don't have any. What's their bread and butter? Wait, I mean, you watch them like I do. What's their bread and butter?
Ant ball screen to try, like empty side ant ball screen to try and like get him downhill or get him into a pull up opportunity. To me, it feels like they don't move the ball all that well when I watch them. Yeah.
One or two passes to a shot. And the times when they do get some ball movement that, it's like it's rushed by the defense. A lot of this beautiful game stuff that people like to point out is because really good defense. Sometimes it is the beautiful game, but a lot of times it's the defense has this offense and forces them to do stuff and forces them to move the ball. Mm-hmm. And it just, that's what I see with them. It sticks. And then when it's moving, it's out of desperation. It's not
Yeah.
out of, there's no plan, there's no organization. And this is where the Mike Conley stuff comes in, because Conley is washed. I mean, and yeah, he's old and he's a small guard. Like I don't know why this is sneaking up on like the Wolves. Like we all have watched this happen over the last few years, but they went out and got, Rob Dillingham as like this Conley replacement. They really just needed like a free agent. Like they needed like Tyus Jones or someone, they needed a player who was ready to step in and maybe play 28 to 30 minutes a night, not a rookie that you were hoping,
Yeah, and I think that they thought Conley had another year, basically. Like I think that they thought that like Mike would be fine for one more season, and they'd be able to bring Dillingham along slowly and then be able to integrate him. And then they drafted Terrence Shannon. Maybe they thought like Terrence Shannon being 24 years old, like maybe he'd be able to come in and help a little bit earlier than what he has. It just hasn't worked in that way, right? Like Conley this year, to me, Randle is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
But Conley not being able to really separate from anybody, and also not really being able to like play on the ball as much as they would like. Obviously, you want to put the ball in Ant's hands as much as possible. He is who he is. He's a great player. But last year, it just felt like they had that secondary, like steady, sharp player next to him. And this year, it feels like they have a guy who is 38 years old next to him, 37, 38, whatever he is.
Comes so fast,
and
man.
It came for Conley in a hurry, it feels like to me. And that has really changed the calculus for them. On top of, and this is compounded by the lack of spacing. I think that if you still had Towns there, it might look a little bit easier for Conley to separate. It might look a little bit easier for him to get around. But without Towns there and with Randle there, it still didn't really work. And Randle, I thought he would get guarded more than he has, kind of, because typically with Randle, like you still have to at least like get a body on him early. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, he's just going to like bully you into the post. But teams are just kind of letting him bully them into the post and say, okay, we're just going to let you do this. And if you take a pull up, 12-footer, whatever, cool. We're fine with that. Right.
Let me ask you a question.
Sounds good.
Let me ask you a question. If I told you, hey guys, Julius Randle's going to beat us tonight, does that scare you as a basketball team? No. Yeah.
No,
go
NBA
get 30.
Team.
If he gets 30, guess what? That's probably a win for your team. So on the scouting report, I'm sure it's like, hey guys, one-on-one, you don't send a double. Don't worry about it. He's a black hole so often. And even on the nights where he has a lot of assists, that's not by design. It's frustrating to watch because this team did share the sugar a lot more last year. Now, if
felt like they moved it around quicker. Yeah, I agree.
Let me ask you, if DiVincenzo's shooting better, you feel better about it?
Yes, obviously I do. And that might have been like the biggest miscalculation for me. Like I just thought Dante was going to be a dude now moving forward. And, you put him in a different environment. You put him into a circumstance where maybe he's not getting as many catch and shoot threes because they're not collapsing the defense as much. So he's not, spraying the ball out and he's getting a tighter contest every time that he shoots the ball. I kind of thought that would help lift the spacing, but in reality, it just kind of hasn't yet. And he'll start making shots. Like he's not a 33% 3-point shooter, which is what he's shooting right now.
Right.
Like he's not that. He'll be fine at some point. He can really go. But to me, it's just kind of like a compounding of all of the things, right? Where you lose the spacing from Towns. You have Randle, who is a like pound the ball into the ground, dribble, then pass guy, not a quick movement guy. You have Conley that has kind of lost some steps here, let's say, has lost a step at least. As a overall scorer, playmaker, whatever you want to say. And that has bogged down Ant in like a substantial way where literally in the comments, Brian K brings up what I wanted to say. Jeremy Sohan has 15 more dunks than Anthony Edwards this year, and Sohan has played God knows how many games. Like, he's missed, a number of games this year. To me, the reason for that
that's not an Ant problem.
Yeah, that's a spacing problem. That's not an Ant problem.
Victor Wembanyama shooting 13 threes a game.
Yeah, like, I think that the bigger problem for them is just like the spacing for Ant. They need to go out and like figure out a way to get the spacing right again. And the real problem for them, I think, is I don't know who's going to let them do that, because you only have, I believe, the one pick that you can move. They might be able to move two. I can't remember if you can move one or two for them, but it would involve probably moving Randle for guys who can shoot.
Yeah.
The deal that would be amazing and that I would love to see is them go to get like Cam Johnson. Like, they're the team that almost like most needs Cam Johnson to me. But like, if you could find a way to do like Randle for Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith, like, that would be incredibly fun to me. But it probably involves you giving up multiple first round picks that you don't have, really. Or maybe they just maybe the Nets really like Dillingham or something like that. I don't know what it is.
God, but it's only Dillingham. I mean, they just, the assets dried up fast.
They did. So I don't know what you do. Like, I think Leonard Miller can play, but like, Leonard Miller isn't a great fit here either, because he's not like an awesome shooter. Like, I'm interested in Minot still. Like, we saw him in the preseason. He looked pretty good. Saw him at Summer League. He looked pretty good. It's just that a lot of these guys that they have selected over the last like few years, they are the non-shooter type.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets kind of hard to kind of figure out how to make all of that work together in conjunction with one another. When you have a lot of these non-shooters, it's hard to get the other non-shooters on the court. So,
and let's not discount, by the way, that Jaden McDaniel's season hasn't been great until here the last couple of weeks. So like,
he just hasn't taken the step offensively.
And that has made everything just, I mean, it's just shines a bright light on every single problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's actually like a real issue for them as well, that he can't really create his own shot in any way, shape, or form. Ant has been like shooting lights out from three this year. It's insane. He's shooting 42% on 10 3-point attempts per game, and he's still only averaging like 26. If you would have told me that Ant was shooting 10 3-point attempts per game, and was shooting 42%, I would have told you that he's averaging 35.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have any space to get onto the interior. And you saw this, by the way, like, this is what Ant looked like at Georgia, guys. Like, that Georgia team had no space whatsoever for him to be able to attack. This is why, like, people in the draft process questioned, oh, well, like, how good of an athlete is he? Like, he doesn't really, dunk the ball. He doesn't really get into the paint all that often. It's because there's no space around him to be able to do this. If I was Minnesota, I would be trying to retool around spacing and around different avenues to acquire that. It's just, I don't know how you're going to go about doing it necessarily.
Well, first, it's Naz Reid in the starting lineup, but Naz also hasn't had a great season shooting the ball. People talk about Towns as a spacer, but Towns was not a high volume spacer, but the threat of him shooting, because he's such a good shooter, that mattered a lot for Ant. But by the way, they had offensive issues last year. Let's not act like this was some sort of offensive juggernaut. I mean, we saw them get super hot in the playoffs, and that made them look better than they were. But this was a team that needed something else, and it needed more space for this year anyway. They gave themselves less space. So I think Naz Reid in the starting lineup is where you start. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I would make the move at this point. You have no connection to Randle. Here's the issue. You have to hope that Randle doesn't totally shut down if you do that. Right. And based on his effort so far, we can talk about Julius being Julius can be as good of a dude off the court as he is.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that we have the evidence of his effort on the court.
Right.
We can go look at the tape. We can see that he's not moving. and like making decisions to not run back in transition, to not pick up guys in transition, to not do all of the things that he's supposed to do, right?
Yep.
We can bring all of that up because it's there. It exists on the tape if you watch the Timberwolves. And that's what the most frustrating thing is about watching them right now. They're still 5th in defensive efficiency because Gobert is as good as he is. Jaden McDaniels is as good as he is. Like all of these things are so apparent when you watch the tape. Like Gobert is still insane as a rim protector. Jaden McDaniels is insane defensively. Is an overall perimeter wing defender, everything like that. I think Ant is still quite good on the ball. I think that Nikhil is an unbelievable defender. Yeah, Ant is good on the ball. The problem is like off the ball, he starts to lose.
I don't like the nights where he's being performative defensively, right? Like I like the nights where
there are nights like that.
I do like the nights where it's like, close game and he wants to get up and go guard the guy. That's great. But there's nights where he's picking up a guy 75 feet. And it's like, hey man, you're the number one option. That's not your job.
Yeah. So YouTube user asks, is Randle tradable on his current contract? Yes, but like
by the Timberwolves?
It's going to be like a distressed asset for distressed asset kind of move. Like it's going to be like, oh, we have a guy on our team that we're frustrated with right now. How about you guys take a shot on him? We'll take a shot on Randle, kind of thing. Like it's not going to be like, oh yeah, he has like plus value, because he still has, if I remember correctly, another year on this contract. Because look, Julius Randle has a player option.
Yeah.
Like he has a player option for next year.
What does he make?
He makes 33 this year, and he's locked in at 30.9 next year.
What's Ben Simmons make?
Guys, 46, 43,
call it in.
Something like that.
Call it in. Ben Simmons is the backup to Rudy Gobert, playing the 5 like he ought to. He doesn't have to do anything important. Just go out there, rebound, play defense. Oh man. So
here's the thing. Ben Simmons right now,
probably
more trade value than Julius Randle, just because he has this isn't expiring. Ben's on his last year of his deal.
That's it.
I mean, would
you do that?
I probably would if I'm Minnesota. Yeah.
For a couple seconds, maybe
I would want to find a third team to move Simmons to in order to try and get back a distressed asset, basically, to me. That's the deal that's interesting to me is, if you're Portland, would you get off the Jeremy Grant deal, get off the final 2 years of the Jeremy Grant deal for Julius Randle?
Ooh, and that solves some problems too, if you're Minnesota.
Yeah, I don't know if Jeremy Grant's great anymore, but it's a better fit.
It is a much better fit. And in a lower stakes, you think about Jeremy Grant playing the 4 next to Gobert, that's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, it could work.
Yeah, he'll play.
Yeah, you have more lineup flexibility. You could go Grant at the 3 with Nas and Gobert. You could go, Jaden Grant, Nas. You could go Jaden Grant, Gobert. That tracks a little bit more.
Another guy who can handle the ball sometimes.
Yeah, it feels to me that Portland is still way overvaluing Jeremy Grant. And saying, oh my God, this guy still is, a really good player. But the problem is he has 4 years, $120 million or whatever left on that deal. If I was Portland and Minnesota came and offered me, hey, we'll give you Julius Randle and Leonard Miller for Jeremy Grant or something like that, I would probably do that if I was Portland, just to get off the final 2 years of the Grant deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good move for them. I mean, as many bites at the apple as they can get,
Yeah, and Grant, kind of you move off of that money.
Yeah.
In a way that's sharp. I don't know. I feel if you can get off of long-term money if you're Portland, and by the way, assuming they can't move Ayton, Randle and Ayton's deals kind of expire at the same time. So you get some flexibility as soon as those deals expire at the same time. That feels like setting yourself up for Portland if you're in the future to me.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. You got another one?
Yeah, the Nets were the other team I was trying to figure out. Like the Simmons
Cam Johnson
idea isn't catastrophic, but like I don't think you're getting Cam Johnson. Like I think that they want like multiple firsts that you just don't have to offer.
Who's your dream for there? If you could put anyone there, right? Any non-star, like, I mean, yeah, Kevin Durant would be great, but dream 4 that's just like a guy, like on the Jeremy Grant level. Cam Johnson.
Yeah, I mean,
level. Like if you could just pick anyone.
I feel like the guy that everybody around the league would love is like Tari Eason, but like they're not moving Tari.
Yeah.
So that's not an option.
Yeah.
Guy that could actually be available. Oh man, that's hard. That is kind of tricky, I think.
Yeah. This is why, and someone on YouTube is asking if Cam Johnson's worth multiple firsts, but this is the thing, like Cam Johnsons don't grow on trees.
So yeah, R. Jones, yes, is Cam Johnson really worth multiple firsts? So Cam Johnson is on a deal that he is definitely worth. Like he's worth $22 million a year or whatever. And they don't have to move him because they have him for 3 years. So like, do I think he's worth like a good first and a good prospect? Like maybe something like that. I don't know about straight up 2 firsts, but like the answer here is I don't think they would move him unless they get like equivalent value to 2 firsts. So if you want to go get Cam Johnson, you probably have to give that up. Otherwise, they're going to just keep him at the end of the day. So I don't really see it, in all honesty.
Me either. I do.
Someone said Kuzma for Randle.
Hey, you know what? It at least again theoretically works, and Kuzma is better than he's been. That's maybe not. All right, maybe not. Maybe
I think that's.
He has been better
you're
than
right.
He is right now.
I think if you put him like in a position where he's like trying to win games, I think he'd probably be better.
Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's the idea for Randle to me. It's like it has to be like a distressed asset kind of player as opposed to a like real dude.
But to me, it doesn't have to be a starter because you've got Naz Reid at home.
Yeah. And why would the Wizards do that? Yeah. You get off of 1 extra year of Kuzma, but honestly, if I was them, I wouldn't do it. I would rather just like take the shot with Kuzma still that I could get off of that money.
It's Bilal's team now.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my God, it's Bilal's team. I love it. I'm into it. I
can't have Julius Randle out there taking the ball from Bilal.
Bilal might need the ball taken from him from time to time, but
let him cook.
I'm all in on letting him cook.
French bistro.
Okay. The French bistro is in session and is cooking. Okay. The final thing I want to talk to Dave about, because Dave can get his crotchety old man pants on from time to time. I wanted to talk to him about this whole conversation about like the NBA and the league itself and whether or not, look, I don't really care about the ratings. The ratings don't matter as much right now because they just signed like a long TV deal.
Yeah.
So the ratings for the next like 2 years, not something that like totally matter. Once we start getting into like the middle point of that TV deal going into next year, because this is really the last year of the current TV deal.
Right.
And it's a 5-year, 6-year TV deal. Is it a 7-year TV deal?
7 year, I think.
7-year TV deal.
Yeah.
Like this year and next year, like don't really matter that much in terms of ratings. It's once we start getting into like year 2, year 3, year 4 of the current of like the incoming TV deal when it will become concerning.
Right.
If things don't work out.
From a business perspective.
Right.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
So the ratings thing, I don't really care about.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, I do want to ask the question of just like, why do we feel like, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Why do we feel like the non-hyper engaged NBA fan, because I feel like the hyper engaged NBA fan is completely comfortable with where the league is, and those guys, those people, those men and women are not leaving. Those, boys and girls that love the league, they're not leaving. Why is the non-hyper engaged NBA fan seemingly struggling to connect with this iteration of the league?
I don't know. I just think that there's more competition for our eyeballs than ever before. And sports used to be, I mean, it was on 3 channels, maybe, at best. So it was more appointment TV. And now, I don't know, I've got everything at my fingertips at any time. And I have every sport, including every NBA game. So the idea that like people aren't connecting with it. People aren't connecting with anything.
Yeah.
People don't read books anymore. Like, I'm not the first person to say this. I mean, it's more about where we're heading as a society and how we interact with things generally. I just, to me, when I see, oh, the ratings are down, everyone's down. The NFL's ratings are down, not as much as basketball, but they are down. And so, that to me is, I don't think that's the thing. I think what we have is we have this odd, really weird thing going on with perception and the negativity that's attached to what we're watching, which makes no sense to me. The line on the basketball court that demarcates the 2-pointer and the 3-pointer, it's like the Mason-Dixon line. It is the Maginot line. It is whatever line you want to fight a war over. That's literally what it is. It's old guys wanting to complain and yell at clouds because guys are taking shots from 1 foot farther away or whatever. Instead of a long 2, it's a short 3. I just, that one thing. But already in the 3-point era, let's call the last decade the 3-point era. This has been the big explosive sort of moment. Steph Curry is the most electrifying basketball player to ever play. He does numbers every time he plays on national TV.
Yeah.
It's just, he does ratings. So it's not about the game, it's about the players. And I think the problem is you've got, these players are now all packaged as brands. They're not like real people anymore. We're overexposed to these guys, man. I know their dogs' names. I don't.
So
it's too much, right? Like, you're giving me too much. Michael Jordan was a little bit of a mystery, which was part of what made him so cool, man. I didn't know much about him. And I think that stuff matters, man. They're not held up as like these mythological figures to us anymore. We're getting too much of them. And then the basketball is diminished by the way it's presented. You've got people on TV telling me that what I'm watching is bad. It's not fun. What if I'm enjoying it? So now you're telling me I don't have taste.
So I think that you brought up the idea of overexposure. And I think that is something that impacts the NBA more than it impacts the NFL. If only because in the NBA, you see players' faces. There are only 15 guys on a team versus 53 on an NFL team, right? There are 22 guys on the court in an NFL game. And like, to understand what all 22 guys are doing at once, you have to watch a specialized tape, all 22 tape, in order to actually see everything that's happening on an NFL field.
Mm-hmm.
With the NBA, you see everything that's happening all the time. These people and their faces are always on the screen. So in this era of modern social media, I think that we get to know them a little bit more, and they become, in this era of polarization, like, I'm literally reading Ezra Klein's book, Why We're Polarized, right now. And you brought up books earlier. It's funny. Like, I'm literally reading this right now. And I think that in this era of hyperpolarization, it becomes easier for, the people who want to, make a big deal out of everything, the people who make a crisis out of every single moment, to be able to do that. The people who do things in bad faith, but even the people who don't do things in bad faith, and just see who these people are and don't really connect with them, it becomes easier to see that.
Right.
The second piece of overexposure I think that we get is literally just the games. Like,
right.
Back in the 90s, like, you saw more games, but like you can see highlights from every single game right now at the palm of your fingertips. You can get access to every game via League Pass. You can get access to, every single night you can watch NBA games, and you can see every single second of NBA games. It was harder to do that. Like you had to catch Sports Illustrated, or not Sports Illustrated, Sports Center between the hours of 8 to or 7 to 9, 6 to 9 in the morning while you're prepping for work in order to understand what you're seeing on the court. Like highlight culture was just drastically different then. I think that is overexposed now. And in this era of hyperpolarization, it's easier to pick out the flaws of what we see on an NBA court as compared to what it used to be.
Yeah.
If you go back and you watch some of those older games, guys, like
bad,
they're, I don't even want to say that look, the quality is not as good. Basketball players, even 25 years ago, are not nearly as good as they are now. I'm sorry if you guys think otherwise. They just aren't.
It's natural.
And that goes for
things. You don't have to apologize for that.
That's exactly right. It goes for any sport.
Yep.
Baseball players throw so much harder now than they used to. Hockey players are more skilled because they come up, and continue to play like travel hockey throughout the course of their lives at a younger age. Football players are better than they ever have been. They're bigger, they're stronger,
Dr.
they're
J
faster.
couldn't dribble with his left hand. You know what I mean? Like, let's just be honest here, right? I mean, Sam, like, and that's not 25 years ago. That's farther, but the game has come a long way in the last 25 years from a skill perspective.
It absolutely has. And I think that is a real factor here. And on some level, I can understand why, for instance, R. Jonesy says in the comments, I'm not saying every team plays the same, but I'm saying there's less variety of styles in the NBA. It's so much drive and kick. I think there's something to that. Sure. But it's kind of what I texted you yesterday.
Yeah.
I think it's slightly different than that. So like what my theory is, first and foremost, like if you look in 1998, the Denver Nuggets, right? They took 35.4 mid-range jumpers per game. They made them at a 35% clip. They took 10.9 threes and made them at 32.5%. This year, the Nuggets are taking 30.5 threes and making them at 38.5%. They're taking 9.9 mid-range attempts and taking them at 39.9%. They've literally just flipped the threes and the twos. These are jumpers, like they're mid-range jumpers or 3-point jumpers, but there's people shooting the basketball, not getting into the lane. They've just flipped them.
They're doing a better job of not stepping on the line, honestly.
Correct.
Big part of it.
Or taking 2 steps inside the line, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
What I think is somewhat behind this in terms of people struggling, like non-hyper engaged NBA fans. I do think that the style has changed. I think that what like the, baseline NBA fan or like the non-hyper engaged NBA fan, I think part of what they miss is just like dudes going like one-on-one with one another. Dudes going mano a mano, playing like street ball on some level because they can connect to that because they can play that style, right? Like you can go, you can play one-on-one with somebody, on a blacktop today if you wanted to. You can go to a gym and get some shots up and play 2-on-2 and you're going one-on-one against dudes all the time. I think that like the general non-hyper engaged basketball fan, I think they kind of love that like mano a mano. Hey, like, let's go. Like, let's do this right now. Let's throw down. Let's try and make this happen. They don't want the, like, I love the Spurs like style that people bring up, like the beautiful game, the pass kick, drive kick, continue to move the ball around the court. I think that what like the normal, person loves is just the simplicity of a battle of Anthony Edwards saying, okay, KD, you're right in front of me right now. I'm just going to beat you one-on-one. Michael Jordan, against Craig Elo or Byron Russell, I'm just breaking you down. I'm scoring a bucket to win a game, right? Allen Iverson was one of the most famous players of the last decade, despite being, or of the last like 3 decades, despite being a guy that was like a great basketball player, a Hall of Fame basketball player, I don't know, like you go back and you watch Iverson games, he chucked up a ton of terrible shots. Like we can be real about that, right?
Yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal, like I think that's why people connected to Shaq as well. Shaq was going 1-on-2, 1-on-3, right? Like he was trying to like just beat guys not on his own, because Shaq was an underrated passer too. Like I don't want to sit here and like disparage that, but I think that they like the idea of this. I think like if you look at like the hero's journey or like a hero's narrative, right? They love this idea. This is like the general person in the public, not the hyper engaged basketball fan. I think they love the idea of this hero of the like of Jordan, of Shaq, of Iverson taking on all comers and defeating him. And I think that's an easier narrative to sell than what's happening league wide now, where you see so much more parity, guys moving the basketball. Like there's a genuine discussion as to who the best player in the league is.
Well,
right
fourth best player on the team winds up standing still for 15 seconds and putting up shots, right? It's almost like football games coming down to field goals. It is what I think is happening for a lot of people with like, it's the fourth guy, it's the fifth guy taking the shots all the time, because the defense is set up that way now, right? Like you can force the ball out of guys' hands. Someone's mentioning illegal defense rules back in the day, the way they used to be used. And you're right. You can't have those now. It's just like you can't get rid of defensive 3 seconds, right? Because in the NBA, you want that fast lane to the basket because you want dunks, you want layups, you want that stuff, right? So from a entertainment perspective, there are some things that limit the rule changes and implementations. To me, though, I do think there are some aesthetic things that they can control that would get fans more engaged, like allowing the more physical style of play that we saw the second half of last season. I think that's an easy place to start. I think that the screen rules, man, like letting players and just doing this thing where it's like, oh, we've got a gentleman's agreement to not try here. So I'm just going to put my hands on you. I'm going to push you over here and you're just going to go along gently. Like I really, obviously I'm a basketball coach, so it bothers me to watch this lazy soft switching stuff. But I think that the average fan sees that stuff and they're like, well, what? Like, why aren't they trying to guard, like, why aren't they doing more stuff?
To my point, like the soft switching stuff, like so much of today is like mismatch hunting. It's not, we're going like my best guy against your best guy. It's okay. We're trying to get Jason Tatum, my best guy, on your worst guy. Right. Because we're smarter about it. And like, that's not something you can fix. Like the league is going to continue to try and do that because that's what it is. Right. Like
but that's not a 3-pointer problem, man.
I actually don't think it's a 3-pointer problem. I think people use that as like an easy crutch to sit on.
Yeah.
And like they can look, that's the easiest number to pull in terms of the way that the league has changed.
I just don't think the people making that argument are I don't think they know enough about basketball to even know what they're watching necessarily to make the argument that it's trying to make.
Certainly not older eras of basketball.
Definitely
not. I think this is real too, by the way. The league has done a very poor job
100%
of promoting younger players besides Wemby and Ant. Even Luka and Tatum not hyped up properly. They made attempts with John LaMelo, but they've not lived up to it. I think Brian K is 100% right.
LeBron versus Steph on Christmas Day. That's fantastic. That's great because you like those legacy games. That is the marquee game of the day.
How the fuck do you not have Oklahoma City on Christmas Day?
How do you not have Oklahoma City on on Christmas Day? Oh my gosh, man. The schedule is very odd.
I think that the league has not done a good enough job of lifting up who its best players are.
Yeah.
And convincing people. Like, look, like Nikola Jokic on some level, like he doesn't seem like he wants this. Like he doesn't seem like he wants to be the face of the league. And like,
but that's not his choice. It's not his choice. He signs the contract, he gets the money, and he doesn't have to go do interviews because he's the best basketball player in the world. He's one of the best of all time. So he sells himself every time he touches the ball.
And he plays this incredibly fun, engaging brand of basketball as well that like I truly love watching. And he is somebody that like kind of does go, he's one of the best passers, if not the best passer I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But like he is somebody that will go like 1-on-2 at times, and like teams will double him and he'll make decisions off of it. And I think that people can like wrap their head around his game in the same way that they wrap their head around Larry Bird. Right. But he's not as fun as Larry Bird, right? Larry Bird would be out there talking an immense amount of shit for 40 minutes or 48 minutes. And Nikola, God love him, and it's amazing that he does not want to do this stuff, but like he just wants to go to Serbia and go like race horses, right? So like anytime that the season ends for him, he's just going back home. And I get that. It sucks for the league, but here's the thing. You still have Giannis, who is this fun, engaging personality, who I think would like embrace being the face of the league and has embraced being a face of the league. Luka, it seems like, would embrace it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like honestly, beyond him liking fashion, this is a league failing more than it is like a Shai failing to me. Yeah. And I think Shai is Nike, if I remember correctly, but like it's a whoever is like branding Shai as well as the league itself failure that like I don't know a ton about Shai beyond just like I know he loves fashion. I know he's like generally kind of a quiet dude,
probably
like
kind of quiet and boring.
But still, like I should know more about him. And like I
agreed.
Fucking follow the league as close as anything.
I don't know his dog's name.
Totally, right? Like Anthony Edwards, I know a lot about.
Too much.
Because Anthony Edwards puts himself out there and he's a fun dude, right? Like
don't send the video.
Yeah, don't
send the video.
He makes mistakes.
Yeah.
He makes a lot of mistakes. And they're bad ones, to be clear. Like Anthony Edwards makes like really bad mistakes, it seems like, from time to time. Like he's, somebody who's had slurs against homosexual people. And you still like people still connect with him because of the genuineness, even though he does these things which are horrible, right? Yeah. And he absolutely is somebody that does like too much in the space, right? There are people that are willing to do it. I just feel like the league has to really just hype up. There are so many great players in the league right now. The league is more talented than it's ever been. There's so many avenues here where the league could find people to promote within it. And I feel like it has not done a good enough job of that at this stage of its, like, you can have the best player in the league being Tim Duncan,
right.
Nikola Jokic can be this era's Tim Duncan, as Eric like comments, right? But you need to find other guys. And so far the league has not promoted those other players in a manner that makes sense to me.
The other thing is they've honestly abandoned the team part of fandom completely. Like if LeBron changes teams, his fans go with him, and that has been bad for the NBA. And I think it's bad. Like it's bad for the vibes people bring to watching these games. They're not fans necessarily of a team. And that is a big problem. I mean, baseball survives a 162 game season because it's regional. You might watch 100 Yankees games if you're a Yankees fan, but you're only following the Yankees. Whereas the NBA, they expect you to follow the whole league. Good luck having a conversation unless you can follow the whole league. And that is a real thing for the NBA. Now the NFL has that too, but the NFL is a whole different beast. Like we can't even compare the NBA and the NFL anymore. It's not fair. They have this short, super impactful regular season and then single game elimination. I mean, it's
and the NFL also has fantasy football. That's the big thing.
That's it.
Like fantasy football is so hyper engaging for people that you're able to follow the whole league easier.
Another thing that the NBA fumbles by having the whacked out schedule that it's got is fantasy. Because I mean, think about this. NBA Cup. One of my friends told me NBA Cup ruined his week in fantasy because he had a bunch of guys on OKC and Milwaukee. Right now, okay, this is a silly thing to think about, but this is something the NFL would have sort of thought about because it's such a key part of their business. And again, if the NBA just had 3 games a week, if all the teams played 3 times a week, I don't know how you break it out, and you knew the night, hey, tonight it's NBA night. Hey guys, let's watch the NBA. Even if it's not just 3 nights, if you spread it over 4, I don't know. But if you had marquee nights, you probably make it easier to watch. There's so many things, but I do think that the part where people are complaining about the style of play, it's lazy. Mostly they're saying, look, there's a lot of threes. They're not watching these games necessarily. And I also can sympathize with if you drop in and, Boston's down 20 because they shot 10% from 3 in the first half, and they're out there in the third quarter bombing away. And I can understand not wanting to watch these guys dribble up and take shots, but it overwhelmingly is not like that.
So the other comment here is injuries, right? Rap Stallion brings up injuries. I'll tell you what ruins, he brings up fantasy, but this is, true of the NBA is injuries.
Yeah.
So my theory on this.
Okay.
Well, I have a theory to fix this.
Oh, I have a theory on why it feels different now than it
Okay,
used
you
to
go, you talk about that then. Yeah.
So there's so much money involved. Guys don't retire anymore. Period.
Yeah.
Period. Used to be rare that you had a guy playing like 36, 37, 38. And now, if you're in the upper echelon, if you're in top 30 of the NBA, like, is Paul George going to play till he's 40? Maybe. Is he,
Probably
you know
will.
what I mean? Like, you think about this, like, guys are just playing longer regardless. But even when they're hurt, they're probably playing longer because now they're also, it's an investment. It's $40 million. It's $60 million. It's not, whatever Brandon Roy was making when he fought, you know what I mean? Whatever that was, not very much. There's a different thing involved here. So not just for the player, also for the team. Like there's millions and millions of dollars in marketing these players, in selling season tickets, like everything. I think the money part of this makes the injury part worse because it's all dragged out. And guys are trying to be ready for the playoffs too. Like that, they're missing a lot of regular season games, and it's guys who are really hurt, but because they're trying to gear up to deliver for the playoffs. It's a tough problem, man.
So my fix for this is largely just going to FIBA rules. And FIBA rules includes 40-minute games. So here's my theory on why this helps.
Yeah.
And why it wouldn't impact the record books in the way that people think it would.
Okay.
So 40-minute games instead of like reducing the schedule. I'm saying keep 82 games because
82,
to me,
40.
The league is not changing that, right? Like they want the inventory of games to be able to sell to local providers, to be able to sell to national providers like ESPN, TNT, Amazon, everything like that. They want to have it for League Pass to make League Pass an incredibly valuable product. Okay. From an injury perspective, 40-minute games is just going to help.
Correct.
Right. B, like from a wear and tear over the course of a season, you've reduced minute loads, everything like that. B, faster games in an era. Like I go to NBL games here. They're in and out in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I think that would help a ton with NBA team, with like fan bases. I think it would help an immense amount. 3, look at the pace of play in previous eras, right? Like the 90s, like we're talking like 90 possessions a game, 91, 92 possessions a game. Right now we're at like 100, 101, 102.
Yeah.
Right. So you reduce a game by what, like 16% or so, right? By, cutting it by 1/6, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're just reducing like the minute totals or the possession totals by like 14%. So like there'd be slightly fewer possessions than there were in the 90s, but not like a crazy amount fewer than there were in the 90s. So you potentially reduce minute and reduce wear and tear. You keep the TV inventory, which I think is obviously really important to the NBA. You quicken games, you make things just like a little bit more valuable. FIBA, refereeing, as obviously is just allows more physicality.
Mhm.
I think that it is a better brand of basketball. Everybody watches the Olympics will
No
say, "Oh my
live
God,
ball
this is amazing.
timeouts.
This rules. No live ball timeouts. End of games go quicker." I think that just adopting FIBA rules, including a 40-minute game, would make the NBA better. And I think it would help the product from an injury perspective
Mhm.
while also achieving its financial goals.
I agree with all that. The issue, it's a labor issue. 40
It is.
fewer game minutes per team.
Mhm.
A 40-minute game. I mean, it's just there's greed, right? Greed is at play here. I don't think you're going to create a league where guys don't get used to 35, 36 minutes. And I don't know that you'll have a league that would transition to, all right, stars, you're going to play 28 minutes. I mean,
So
I mean,
my
now all
case
of a sudden
against you
you're
there,
going to cut the rosters down.
no, my case against you there is it works in Europe.
Okay, but
Guys,
it
it's
works
worse.
in
The
Europe.
players are worse. Like, don't get me wrong.
They are worse, and also different people. I mean, we
True.
cannot allow the societal context in which we exist has to come into play here when we're thinking about this. I think, yeah, FIBA rules, except for playing the ball off the rim, because the NBA is an above the rim sport. You'll have a lot of broken fingers.
I agree with that. Actually,
It would actually be bad. I don't mind allowing like I don't like the offensive interference rules, like on a putback. But also I understand why they exist, because it seems unfair to allow the offense to play the ball in the rim and not the defense. I'm fine with the way the NBA does that. But you're just not going to, I don't know, you're not going to get a scenario where guys don't want the counting stats. And 40 minutes, I mean,
I guess my point is, like, the counting stats are going to be there. Like, they're going to be at the level that they were in the 90s.
Okay, but 30 points a game in 28 minutes, you know what I mean? That's a lot. 36 minutes, a little bit more doable. And those sorts of numbers, they matter culturally to NBA players. I mean, I do think that's when you're thinking about the NBA record books, that's the sort of stuff you have to think about is I love the 100-point game, and that would get us there. The 100-point basketball game to me, it makes sense. That would get us there, but you would be either what would actually happen is you'd be cutting out a large
this is incredibly obvious for people, but just explain the 100-point basketball game.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think having a final score where like the winning team scores like 100 points is kind of perfect. And then if you go into overtime and it's 110, 109, I mean, wow, what a bad man. They really had a game. And then what if you had a regulation game that got to 110, 112? That was, wow, they must have shot the lights out. And now we see 140, 150 in regulation. I mean, it's absurd, and it's the pace. And that's part of why it feels off to people. So I'm with you. I think the 40-minute game will feel more in line with what basketball is. And it actually is what it is everywhere else in the world. But those, you lose a lot of jobs that way. And like ownership isn't going to carry guys who aren't playing. And now you got to go to the CBA. It's a whole thing. But I'm with you, man. It'd be better. We'd have a better style of play. I mean, no live ball timeouts means you can full court press in the NBA, because a trap, you can't just get a bailout timeout. I mean, all of a sudden you allow defense to actually play basketball, even if they didn't go to 40 minutes. Switch the FIBA rules on that. I mean, you could change the sport quite a bit, but I do think you need the extra timeouts if you're going to have 8 extra minutes.
So the point that you made about like labor is the key to me. I don't think that there would be a lot of enthusiasm from the Players Association for this.
No.
Unless the league made a guarantee to say, we will not reduce the number of roster spots from 15 over the next 30 years or something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
We will keep the number of roster spots at 15 for the next 30 years. That is the reality of the situation. We will keep it locked in for the next, next 5 TV contracts, like whatever you want to do. Right.
8-man rotations at most, man.
Yeah. Like you would have probably, but again, like yes,
The
you're
hoops
right.
would be
But like
so good.
in Europe, they play like 10 guys every night, like they do in the NBA, right? So like,
Yeah.
I think that there's also a factor of like having fresher guys on the court.
Oh, I
You know
agree
what I
with that.
mean? Like that is a valuable thing to have.
Winning
Still, even
teams
in
like the Warriors, for instance, they would definitely play low minutes. I mean, I just have no doubt
right.
about that. But I do think that there's a world where, you know, some of the stars they wouldn't be happy with that. I would love to. I mean, it would be great. I mean, obviously, this is pie in the sky, never happening. But I'm with you, man. I like it. The 40-minute game rules.
I think it's a good idea.
It's
Like
respectful.
I think it actually like genuinely ticks a lot of boxes that the
Mhm.
league is struggling with right now. End
Yeah.
of game stuff would go away if you have FIBA rules.
Yep.
Wear and tear on guys while maintaining TV inventory would really help. Like all of these things, I think would really be helped a lot by a 40-minute game.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
that
in.
has FIBA rules outside of goaltending. I'm for that.
Right.
Like, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's completely fine.
I'm in.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on it. Like do this and the league is, give it a
Fixed.
try at least. I don't
Fixes
know
all
about
the
fixed,
problems.
but
It's fixed.
yeah,
It's perfect.
like
Perfect league.
I think it would help a lot. I do.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, that's all we got.
It was awesome. What
Tell the people
an hour and 45-minute long podcast. Woo!
and it didn't feel that way.
I don't do that in a week. No, it's
I know. I'm proud of
not
you.
what I
I'm
do.
proud of you for sticking it out.
It's fun, man. I honestly, I had a great time talking to you, man. This was awesome.
I had a great time.
About
tell the
Jalen
people.
Duren. Somebody asked,
Oh,
tell the
Bryce.
people about
Bryce
Jalen
wants to
Duren
know.
before I go.
Yeah,
I don't
ask Dave
know,
about
man.
Jalen Duren.
Honestly, I'm not sure. It's
I think I'm
all
sure.
the Pistons. Oh yeah. Okay. What do you think about Jalen Duren? All the Pistons are just kind of it's hard to judge them, you know? Because it's up and down. And I just need to see. I don't know. Are you out on Jalen Duren?
I'm not. I've never been a Duren guy.
Yeah.
Really. I just don't think he defends. Is my issue.
No, he doesn't.
Like
No.
Yeah. Like I need centers who can defend.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
You know what though? I'm gonna be eating some crow on Cade. It feels like by the time the season's over.
Stud. Just a stud.
He might be. He might be. I'm not ready yet. I need to see him, a little bit more. I'm gonna track it out. But as a known Cade hater, not a real one, but I gotta see a little bit more. Yeah. Hey, if you guys are listening or on YouTube, check out the NBA Daily. We're actually having a really good time. The whole goal of the thing was to make people feel good when they left us, and I think we're actually doing it. I really like all the folks that I work with, and I hope that that's coming across. And Sam, you're going to be on Slam and Jam, right? Like
it's
coming up. All
probably.
right.
Tell
because they cover the draft way more than we do. But you can, you'll be on the NBA Daily at some point. We need to one of these nights. If Cooper Flagg does something crazy, we're going to have you explain it.
I'm happy to come on whenever. You know me.
Yeah, the time difference might actually work in our favor here. But yeah. If you guys want to go check something out, please go and check that out. We're having fun.
Yeah, look, Dave, I obviously love you and I'm excited to have you here, but you were not my first call. My first call was S on the NBA Daily.
Well, okay. Wow.
Because S is terrific.
He is,
and I've wanted to have him on
awesome.
for a while. The main thing is I've wanted to have him on for a while now, and the timing just worked out. But to speak to the NBA Daily, which Dave produces and does an amazing job with, S is probably going to be on the show at some point soon.
That's awesome.
And I will join
S. He grinds tape.
That's it.
Grinds tape.
Absolutely does. He's tremendous, and I am super, super happy to have talked to you instead of S, because this was a great conversation. But also, S and Zena and everybody else at the NBA Daily.
Yep.
Andrew, obviously. Shout out Spears. Alex Spears doesn't get enough.
Alex Spears is so good.
Shout out Alex Spears.
Yeah.
An icon. Don't get enough pub, and I love them all. They do a great job. Okay. Go to The Athletic. Keep both Dave and I employed over there.
Please.
We will be back. There's a chance this is the last episode of the year, but probably not.
Take the rest of the year off.
I would guess we'll be back on Sunday with Bryce at least. There is a good chance this is the only episode this week, though. I will say that, if only because it's Christmas and there's a lot going on here, and things are a little bit wild. If news breaks, if crazy things happen, I'll probably go and we'll talk about things. But the plan here is to probably take the rest of the week at least and kind of let that roll. But until next time, we'll talk soon.